Welcome back to Gavels Down, Voices Up. Today we are going to deep dive into one of the most sensitive aspects of family law: child custody, visitation, and co-parenting. Today we're going to focus on achieving fair arrangements and truly considering the best interest of the child. We're going to do this through the lens of what I see in court and what I see judges do. Welcome to Gavels Down, Voices Up with me, Rachel King. This is where we leave convention at the courtroom door and dive into your real stories, bold and unpopular opinions, and change-making ideas that really shake the legal world up and change where change is desperately needed. I'm here to shake it up, talk about unfiltered insights, and amplify voices that need to be heard. So are you ready? Let's get it. Put the gavels down and the voices up. So this is going to be hugely experience focused, and I'm hoping that as we go through some of these situations, they will resonate with you and you will understand, oh, I did do that, or I shouldn't do that. I've seen it. And you can figure out how to tailor your particular custody and visitation battle away from being a war and more into a lovely co-parenting, copacetic situation. Our kids are only kids for a very short time. And while you are going through a child custody and visitation battle, it can seem all-consuming. Because is there anybody, any person in this world that you love more than your children? Probably not. So now the most important people in your life, you are losing some kind of control over, and all you want is for them to be happy and perfect and the best that they are. But though it seems all-consuming, the reality is that family law is a very short period in your child's life. And for the most of their life, for most of your child's life, they're an adult. And once they're an adult, you are out of the family law court. You don't have to have a judge be involved in your relationship with your child. So what you do and how you handle family law can have huge impacts on the kind of relationship that you have with your child when they're an adult. Let's talk about custody, visitation, co-parenting in family law. So first, let's just get a couple of definitions out of the way. Custody can be broken down into legal and physical custody. Legal custody, I always say, think decision-making power. What religion is your child going to be raised in? What medical treatment are they going to receive? What schools are they going to go to? What extracurricular activities are they going to participate in? And at least in California, and for the most part, I think it's fair to say that the law presumes that both parents are going to share joint legal custody. Then we have physical custody. Physical custody is basically making all of the decisions regarding the child when they're in your physical care. This can be a little bit more difficult because you could have visitation and joint physical custody, but you could also have visitation and not have joint physical custody. So if your child is in your care and you do have physical custody, you get to decide everything about what's going on during that time. Obviously, you have to stay within the confines of the law, but really you get to make the decisions. Where's your child going to eat? If there's an emergency, what hospital are they going to go to? You get all of those decisions. This is different than, typically, let's take a step back. Typically, parents share joint physical custody, at least in California. Unless there's some reason that they shouldn't have joint physical custody, I see judges more and more often giving a joint legal, joint physical custody arrangement for parents. And then we have visitation. And I always say that visitation is the timeshare. I think there's bad connotations when you say I have visitation. So what I say is everybody has visitation. If you have a child, even in a joint custody situation, you still have some kind of visitation schedule. So let's get away from the term visitation and look more at the timeshare. Are you picking up your child on Sundays at 5 p.m. and dropping them off the next Friday at 2 p.m.? Whatever time you have, however that exchange works, your timeshare is also visitation. So it can be really common for dad to have joint legal, joint physical custody and an equal timeshare. It can also be really common for mom to have joint legal, joint physical custody and an every other weekend visitation schedule. We have all three. And when you have all three, you have to navigate how you are going to co-parent. I say you're co-parenting whether you are in a relationship or you're not. If two people are raising a child, you are co-parenting. But it can be a lot easier when you're co-parenting and you're together rather than co-parenting and not together, because when you aren't together, there was typically some divide that happened and some disagreement, and it can be challenging to co-parent. People use their kids as pawns. Oh my God, don't use your child as a pawn. It's so obvious. The court can see it. Everybody in the courtroom can see it. Your friends can see it. Your ex can see it. And you know what? Your kids can see it. Maybe they can't see it at 5 years old, but you bet your ass if you're still doing it by the time they're 17 and you haven't figured out how to undo it, they're going to catch on and see you for what you are. Don't use your kids as pawns. Also, if you're super controlling or micro-parenting, that doesn't work either. You love your children. I'm going to go out on a limb and say your ex loves your children too, just as much as you do. And hopefully, both of you are coming from a situation where you want what's in the best interest of your kids. Now, here's the kicker. What you think is in your kid's best interest may not be what your ex thinks is in your kid's best interest. And so when we're talking about best interest, we're actually talking about a legal standard, not what you think is best and not what your ex thinks is best. We're talking about what's best for the kids. And most courts are going to look at it from the child's perspective. That timeshare, that's not your time with your kids. It's your children's time with you or with your ex. Time and time again, I hear judges say, you should be putting your child first no matter what. I hear judges say over and over again that it's not about you, it's about the child. I hear courts say, you know what? If mom wants to do that, it's fine. Or if dad thinks that's a fun time with his kids, that's okay too. Courts don't want to micromanage parenting. They're your kid. You should be able to make decisions as long as it's safe and not abusive and, again, falls under all of the laws. You as mom or you as dad get to make decisions that you think are best. And the way to get through family law, well, here's my tip. Let me give my tip. Your children love you. And your children love their other parent. And it is your job to create the best life that you can for your children when they're with you, and to give them the support and guidance to have them create the best relationship and life they can with other parent. If you do that, you will be successful. Now, the realities are it can be a lot harder, especially if you're dealing with a very controlling, narcissistic, difficult ex. It can also be hard if you have any history of domestic violence, on either side. How do you do this? Well, one thing is you can realize that you can't change the other parent. You can learn how to co-parent in a way that allows you to be your best self while keeping your children safe. And I mean safe under the law. I once had a parent that said, oh my gosh, I can't have dad have custody anymore. Every Saturday night, he takes the kids to the sports bar and watches the game. I said, all right, does dad drink? Does dad get drunk? Does dad use drugs? Does dad not let the kids do anything? What is the problem with a sports bar? Because legally, the kids are allowed to be at a sports bar. There was really nothing wrong other than mom didn't like that her kids were spending time at a sports bar. Well, dad wasn't drinking. Dad was being safe. There was an arcade, but yes, there were other adults drinking at this sports bar. The bottom line was that in that particular situation, Dad was being a fine parent. He was keeping his kids safe. He was doing an activity that he thought was appropriate. And just because mom didn't like it didn't mean mom got to come in and say no to it. I had another case where mom really liked off-roading. Mom was an avid off-roader and wanted to take her 2 kids, 3 and 5, off-roading with her. Dad said, absolutely not. This is so dangerous. Off-roading vehicles flip all the time. They're hot. It's just not a safe thing to do. And actually, we went into court to have a judge decide. And you know what the judge said? The judge said, I think as long as mom is making sure that the children have the appropriate restraints and helmet and safety equipment, it's totally fine for mom to do this. If it ever gets to a point where it's no longer safe or mom is not providing the right safety gear, then the court said that they'd be willing to readdress it. But that case, the court said, it's okay. You may not like it, but it doesn't mean that other parent can't do it.
And now for a quick break. This episode of Gavels Down, Voices Up is proudly brought to you by King Law Firm Attorneys at Law Incorporated. We're not just about winning cases, we're about making a difference. Whether it's family law, probate litigation, or standing up against elder abuse, we bring experience, empathy, and excellence to the courtroom. At King Law Firm, we're more than lawyers. We're your team, in your corner, advocating for your rights and making your voice heard. Visit us at thelawyerking.com and on the socials at The Lawyer King to see how we fight with you and for you. King Law Firm Attorneys at Law Incorporated, where your fight becomes our fight. Now, let's get back to today's episode.
One time we went into court because one of the parents was raising their children in a religion that the other parent thought was cult-like. For the purposes of this, I'm not going to say what religion that was because I don't think that's appropriate. But this is a well-known religion that has very strict guidelines. Mom was very upset that this was how their child was being raised and said, I don't want my child to participate in that. And you know what the court said? You don't have to on your time. But Dad, he can raise the children in his religion on his time. Now, the court did give some explanations on what would be safe and not safe and warning signs. Of course, courts don't want the children to become part of a cult-like religion or be abused in the religious process, but that wasn't happening, or there wasn't evidence before the court. In each one of these cases, both parents really genuinely were looking out for what they thought was in their kid's best interest. Unfortunately, what they thought was in their kid's best interest differed from other parent. And so if you can figure out how to stay in your own lane, let other parent on their time. It's not your business what other parent does with your kids on their time, assuming there's no abuse and assuming it's not dangerous or unsafe under the law. I feel like I can't express that enough, that because you don't think it's safe doesn't necessarily mean it's unsafe in a law. The most crazy thing I ever heard a judge say, I totally disagree. Let me give the disclaimer that I totally disagree with this judge's statement, but it is eye-opening, and I think it can really shed some light on where the judges are coming from. In this particular case, Dad was drinking and driving with the kids. Police officers did confirm that they heavily suspected Dad was drinking. They did not do a breathalyzer because Dad refused a breathalyzer. They also decided not to arrest because they didn't want to arrest Dad in front of the kids. So instead, the police officers made arrangements for the kids and the vehicle to be taken separately to mitigate or minimize the scene and the stress on the kids. We got to court. Obviously, that was a big deal, right? And I heard both of the attorneys arguing. Of course, parent mom's attorney was saying, this is horrible. Dad was drinking and driving. The police had to be involved. This is not safe. Dad's attorney was coming and saying, there is no alcohol breathalyzer test that confirms whether Dad was drinking. The judge said this: it is not illegal to drink and drive with children in the car. as long as you are not over the legal limit. And because this is such a high conflict co-parenting situation, I am only going to rule at this point that neither party drink and drive with the children over the legal limit. Other than that, I think everybody needs to get into co-parenting classes and figure out how to mind their own business. I was floored. I think both attorneys involved were floored. But it goes to show that judges really want to stay out of your co-parenting, and they don't want to micro-parent. They don't want to have to make orders that are so specific that cause each party to be saying, oh, you violated it this time. Oh, you violated it that time. So when you are going through a custody battle, you might be experiencing some of these nightmare situations that we talked about today, but what can you do? I'm a big fan of the keep it simple, stupid method. This was the KISS method. I learned it in the Army. I keep it with me close and near and dear to my heart. Keep it simple. You don't need to respond to other parent all the time, especially if you have a controlling or narcissistic or difficult co-parent. You need to communicate in writing about the kids. And that's it. And you don't need to go down the rabbit hole. You also don't need to respond to every single text message. If you get a text message that says, how are the kids doing? And you say they're fine. And then you get another text message that says, well, what did they do today? You can bunch your responses together. You don't need to get roped in to a whole long conversation. It's okay to just not respond in some of the situations. Second, focus on yourself and your relationship with your children. Remember, this time is going to pass. And when your kids are 18, they're going to be able to see what kind of parent you were and what kind of parent other parent was. And if you can focus on being the best parent to them and really focusing on your relationship, that's going to be so much better as they become adults. They will see through the other parent. And maybe, just maybe, if you do some of these things, other parent will die down a little bit and won't start picking the battles with you. And you will both be able to come together and raise your own children. I've had people recommend parallel parenting, which is a type of co-parenting that can be really helpful if you're in a high conflict co-parenting situation. So maybe look it up. I will say there's plenty of people that stay out of the family law system and successfully co-parent. And for you, amazing. Your kids are going to love you. I'm a child of divorce and I happen to be a divorce attorney. So I've got it from all sides. And if you can focus on your kids and remember that your kids love the other parent and that all the feelings that you have about other parent are not the same as the feelings that your child has about other parent, you're going to get far and you're going to make it through this co-parenting situation. Lastly, the one thing that I want to say is not everything needs to go to court. You might be right. You might win. They might have violated the order. Maybe they said something really crappy about you to the kids and you have proof. Maybe it's in text message. Is that a violation of the court order? Could be. Most courts aren't going to be too happy and many will make orders that say you can't speak disparagingly of the other parent. But do you want to go into court and fight that out and open all of the other bags of worms and definitely put your kids in the middle of it because they always are because kids aren't stupid? Or do you want to learn again to focus on your child, focus on the relationship that you have with your child, and keep it simple? Not everything requires the court. Not everything needs to have the judge say, yes, you are right, and other parent is wrong. I say this as a divorce attorney that gets paid for all of those conflicts in court. I think it would be inappropriate if I didn't talk about the bias that exists in family law. And this goes back forever, right? And every state, every person that I talk to thinks that the family law court is biased one way or another. And I would be remiss if I said that is not true. However, I really do think genuinely that there is a push to remove the bias and to have both parents be a part, an active role in raising the kids. Does bias exist? Yes. Are there things that you can do to overcome it? Sure. Again, hopefully, though, you can stay out of the family court system and stay out of the bias that could exist. If you are in a custodial dispute, co-parenting, get an attorney. Even if you don't keep them, go talk to an attorney, find out what your rights are, get a therapist, talk to your therapist so you can learn some tools, and maybe together you'll be able to pick out what battles are worth taking in court, if any. But you are a great parent. You have the ability to have a wonderful relationship with your child no matter what is happening outside. So focus on that. My name's Rachel King. I'm an attorney that does family law, and actually I have a book coming out called Getting Divorced Now What? That I'd love for you to pick up a copy of. If you have any questions about custody, divorce, co-parenting, any of that, reach out to an attorney in your area. And until next time, Gavels Down, Voices Up. Thanks for tuning in to Gavels Down, Voices Up. Like what you heard? Then don't just sit there. Subscribe, share, and tell me your thoughts. I'm Rachel King, bringing not just my opinions to the mic, but about the courtroom too. Your part, keep listening, keep engaging, and until next time, let's keep those gavels down and our voices up. Unmistakably up.